Sales is very different. I don't care if you have 100 people following you or 100,000 people following you. If you can't get them to buy your product or service, you don't have a business. Sales is getting them to buy that product, that service, buy into you. Welcome to Girls Make Bank, the podcast show for women who want to learn the art of selling for business and for life. I'm Jack White, seasoned sales professional, entrepreneur, and owner of Honeybees Group. Come back each week to hear inspiring stories from some of our favorite business owners. Learn how to take the ache out of selling and make bank. We're all in this together, so let's get started. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Girls Make Bank. Today's episode is a little bit different. Instead of our usual format, I'm going to share a conversation that I had on Laura Sinclair's podcast when I was a guest, This Mother Means Business. This was such a good conversation that I knew I eventually wanted to bring it to you here on Girls Make Bank. In this talk, Laura and I went really deep on what it takes to grow a business while raising little humans, why women are naturally amazing sellers, even if it doesn't always feel great and sometimes feels icky to sell, and how tools like the Honeybees Profit Planner can give you the financial clarity you need to move forward with confidence. This conversation felt honest, energizing, and it is full of practical takeaways, so I did not want you to miss it. I'm resharing it here because I know you'll walk away with fresh insights, some laughs, and a reminder that you are fully capable of building a business that supports your life. So let's dive in.
Welcome back to another episode of This Mother Means Business. I'm really tempted to just go live from New York. I am joined by Jack White. She is a sales expert. She's the host of Girls Make Bank podcast. Jack, welcome to This Mother Means Business.
Thank you so much. And I would love for you to come to New York and do a live episode. Let's make that happen.
I know. That was literally as I was going through, what am I going to say to start the show? All that I could come through my head was, and live from New York City, it is Jack White. But I'm really excited for our episode today and our chat because we are going to be talking about sales and sales in a way that I've never talked about on the podcast before. I've never had a guest come on and dive into the piece of sales that we're going to dive into today. And I am just pumped because I know that there's going to be so much actionable insights that our listeners are going to be able to just roll with right away. But before we dive in to all the good stuff, do you mind introducing yourself?
I would love to. Thank you for having me on. I love what you do. We are so aligned in supporting women and moms to, grow their businesses and make money and really take ownership of their life in a meaningful way. So thank you for having me on. I am Jack White. I love teaching women how to sell. There's a lot of emotions and ickiness that go into selling, but we all have value and products and services that we deserve to get paid for. So after over 20 years of sales and business development and partnership experience at really big companies and startup companies, I launched my own consulting business because I just felt that female entrepreneurs and small business owners were not making the money that they deserved and didn't feel good asking for what they were worth. And so it's been my mission to help train them up and get their businesses set on a more profitable and sustainable growth path.
Yes, I think sales is such an interesting thing because it's that you have to have it, right? If you aren't making sales, you don't have a business.
Totally.
And, because I'm not going to say but, and it is something that people really struggle with, right? There's a lot of stigma and stickiness around this idea of selling. And so I hope that we can start today or get through today. And by the end of the episode, maybe take some of that away.
Take it away.
Folks. Before we started recording, you said something to me that I was like, oh, we're going to start here. You said a lot of people think that what they need is more marketing. And you're saying, no, what you need is more sales. So talk to me about that. Talk to me about what is the difference between good marketing and good sales.
Great question. And I love this topic. And I think it's really important because Both are important. I'm not saying marketing is not important. Marketing is important, but sales is the most important thing for your business. Like you said, if you're not making money, you don't have a business. And I think we've conflated the two with this rise of social media where we think that marketing is sales and it's really something different. Marketing is your entire brand ecosystem, right? It's all of the people who know about your brand. It's all of the people that you talk to, whether it's on social media, through paid ads, through your email newsletter, whoever comes to your website. It's anyone that you touch or that touches your brand is in some way in your marketing funnel. Sales is very different. I don't care if you have 100 people following you or 100,000 people following you. If you can't get them to buy your product or service, you're just creating content and you're just, having fun, but you don't have a business. And so sales, the difference between marketing and sales is making someone aware of your brand, your product, your service, of you. Sales is getting them to buy that product, that service, buy into you. And that's a totally different related thing. And so you can have a lot of people that love to get your content, that love to comment and share and forward. Maybe some of those people are buying, and maybe you have a pretty good business already because they're buying. But by honing your sales skills, you can get people to convert easier in a way that feels good and really sort of grow your business in a much more powerful, sustainable way.
What do you feel like when we're talking about all of these
Yeah.
things, right? Like sales, I still think feels like, and certainly for me too, right? It feels like this really big umbrella term, right? It's
Yeah.
like your sales. So what are the things that we actually need to have in order to be successful in sales? And I realize that, different industries are different things, but when you think
Sure.
about, if we were to generalize for a second,
Yeah.
what should that look like?
I think one of the most important things, there's a few components. One is value. You need to understand the value that your product or your service or your solution, whatever it is you're selling, actually provides your end consumer. And so you can talk a lot about that value in your marketing, but you have to be really clear about what that is because that's what somebody's buying. Nobody actually cares about what your product or your service is. What they care about is how it impacts them and how it's going to change and solve their problem. So that's number one, be really clear about the value. And I think you get to that value by being a really good listener. And this is why I think women are actually fantastic sellers, even though that term feels gross and it feels ick. There's a lot of like around it. Is to be a great seller, you have to be a great listener because what you need to do is say, okay, what is your problem? I need to uncover your problem because sometimes the people you're talking to don't even really know what the problem is that they're trying to solve for. So you have to be able to ask the right questions and listen to what their answer is to get to the heart of the problem and really identify, what it is they're doing. So and that's where your value can come into play, right? So by listening to enough people, you might not have the right solution right now, but you may be able to build it, right? So that's where maybe a new product comes up. So you need to understand the value of what you're delivering. You need to be able to listen, right? And really make sure that your solution is a fit for their problem. And then you need to feel confident asking for what you're worth. You need to feel confident making the ask. And a lot of people feel really uncomfortable with that piece. That's the most uncomfortable piece. And I think when you know you provide value and you know it's going to solve somebody's solution, you should feel really good about selling it to them because you know it's going to help them and you know that they're going to get more than what you're getting out of the deal.
Yeah. One of the most powerful reframes for me was that selling is helping. And it
Yeah.
was back when I owned a gym, I was working with a coach around that time, and it was talked about just help first, right?
Yeah.
Help first. And that shifting my energy around what selling is like I'm helping. You
Yes.
can take the help or not. But
Mhm.
really just making that shift for me mentally was something that helped me build my confidence in those situations because I'm telling you, Jack, the first time that I sold a high ticket, like personal training package at my gym, I will never forget this moment. It was like $1,600, which,
It's
now in
a
my
lot of
business
money.
today, it's a lot of money, but
Yeah.
it's nowhere close to the most amount of money I've now sold. But I could literally taste it in my mouth,
Yeah.
what I'm saying. Well, it's $1,644. And I could taste the words coming out of my mouth because to me, it was like I just wasn't in that mindset.
Mhm.
Even though I knew that they were getting value for, I mean, the number of personal training sessions and the things that they were
Yeah.
going to do for them was going to be something that I knew would be impactful, but I just couldn't wrap my head around the energetic exchange that comes through. And so I'd love to go into this piece around confidence that you
Yeah.
mentioned is like having the
Yeah.
confidence to charge. I don't even want to say what you're worth. It's like what the work's worth,
What it's worth.
really,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
Um, Talk to me about that. How do we get better at that?
Yeah. So two things. One, I think you said something that's really important is it's not your value, right? It's tied to the what you're delivering. And so I
Yep.
think sales feels really personal because it's you doing the thing. So rejection, if somebody says no, I don't want what it is you're selling, feels personal, but they're not rejecting you. They're saying this isn't a fit for what I need right now. So I think there's a really important distinction to make there. But I also think whether it's sales, whether it's creating content and putting yourself out there, whether it's networking, we all have areas in our business and in our life that are uncomfortable. And
Yep.
so what do? We avoid it, right? Because we don't want to do things that are uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So I talk a lot with my clients about doing uncomfortable things because that is where growth comes from in our business, in our life, personally. When you force yourself to do something uncomfortable and you get through it and you succeed, there's a tremendous amount of personal satisfaction that comes from that. And so I think it's really important to identify that selling is uncomfortable and it doesn't feel good. And rejection is something that nobody likes, but it's a necessary part of doing business. And so the sooner you can get comfortable with being uncomfortable, the more success you will have at selling, number one. And the other thing that I think is really important is you don't have to go from 1 to 100 overnight. What we're talking about is, become better and more comfortable at selling over time. I think social media and the business leaders that we follow make everything seem so easy, and what we don't realize and understand is that they've been doing this for a really long time.
Yeah.
They have teams and teams of people behind them, and they want it to look easy because then you're going to buy whatever product or course or whatever it is they're selling, right? And so I talk about like habit stacking and sort of, trying to do something a little bit better every time. So if selling is uncomfortable for you, really log, okay, what was the feedback that this person gave me? What felt good about this experience to me? What didn't feel good about this experience to me? Record yourself practicing calls or record your client or sales calls so that you can go back and listen and say, oh, this sounded really good when I said this. And I could see that they were responding. And this, I can tell, like it felt not good when I said this and it sounded not good when I said this. And so I need to like rework that. Don't be afraid to get better over time. I think, that's a part of becoming more comfortable doing something is practicing it and knowing that you're not going to be good at it right away. But over time, if you can get better, it can really transform your business.
Yeah. I mean, it's a skill. It's like
Yeah,
anything, right?
like
And
anything.
for me, I actually really love to sell now in this season of my business. I think it's so fun. I love
Hmm.
having conversations. I've really sort of eased into my own way of doing it. And I'm super proud of the skills that I've developed, but they've taken time. I mean,
Yeah.
I always say that owning a gym was the best sales practice that I could have ever been in because I was in so many sales situations and I saw so many different things,
Yeah.
right? And so many different objections and so many different levels of willingness. And, I've learned a lot and I'm really grateful for that. But there's no way that I would have any level of comfort with selling if it wasn't for those reps. And so I
Yeah.
love that you say that because for most people, especially in the early stages of your business, selling, unless you have come from a corporate sales background, probably have no
Yeah.
experience with it at
Yeah.
all. And now it's like this lifeblood of your business. So I'd love to talk to that person for a second. Let's
Yeah.
talk to the woman who is in the early stages of her business. And for context, I mean, like making less than 7 figures a year, they're maybe in the first, 3-4 years of their
Yeah.
business. They know they need to get better at selling. Where does one start? How do I
Yeah.
get better at this? What are the things that I need to be doing?
And I talk to a lot of women that are in that boat. They've sort of become I call them accidental
Yeah.
entrepreneurs. They didn't start out with dreams of owning and running their own business, right? They had a
Yeah.
career, they were doing something else before, and whether life or work, something, there was a trigger moment where they said, "Oh, now I need to do my own business." And they're really excellent at whatever it is that business does. They're
They sell.
experts at that. But you're right, they don't come from a sales background, and so that part feels not good. And I would say, really these are the exact people I work with, right? It's like training them and helping them figure out the sales style that works right for them. And I think there's techniques and frameworks that kind of are universal, but you said it. It's like you had to trust your own style. I think when
Yeah.
we look at what quote unquote sales means and we look to what those examples are, they typically are very aggressive, middle aged, flashy white dudes,
Yeah. The bro sales.
the
Yeah.
bros. And a part of why sales doesn't feel good is because we feel like I either need to one, emulate that, or number two, that's my worst nightmare. I don't want to be that. And so I really think, leaning into your own style and your own sort of personality is really important. And then the other thing I would say is talk less and listen more. When you're in the sales process, because it's uncomfortable, what do we tend to do when we're not comfortable? Talk, 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 talk. Let
Yeah.
me tell you about why I'm so great. Let me tell you why my service is so great. Let me tell you why you have to do this. And then you become that salesperson. And
Yeah.
so I would say really try to show some restraint in those moments and catch yourself and continue to ask questions and knowing the right meaningful questions to ask that brings the person into your story. Help them figure out that you're the right solution for them as
Mm.
opposed to having to tell them that you're
Yeah.
the right solution for them.
I love that. I have been taught all of the bro ways.
Yeah.
And, if I go back to my gym, I had a lovely coach. It was fine. This is not me trying to speak ill of this group, but one of the things that they were teaching us was handling objections, right?
Yeah.
How to handle objections. And a common objection in the gym world is I just need to talk to my partner. And the way that I was taught, which I never did for the record, just right before this comes out of my mouth, was sure, let me step out of the room so that you can call them. Or let
Yeah.
me give you some space so you can call them right now. I'm happy to speak to them. No, thank you. I never did that, right? And
Yeah.
I have used some of the things that I have learned through those tactics in the past. And truthfully, the people that end up coming into my world through those tactics have been my worst clients. Like people
Yeah.
I didn't want in my gym or didn't want in my coaching business. They just didn't jive for me. And so I've really had to learn to let go of some of these traditional methods
Mm-hmm.
because they just bring in the wrong
Yeah.
I'm closing the wrong sales. For me, it's important that the women that are coming into my world are doing it in an empowered way,
Yeah.
right? Not from a place of me being like, if you don't hire me, your business is going to go
Yeah.
down the shitter forever, right? Like they have to come to me in an empowered way.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I can't really link arms with them in the way that I want to.
Yep.
And so for me, that's where I've just had to adjust. But I'm curious from your perspective as an actual sales expert, of which I do not define myself, how do we handle objections, and how do we, find ways to navigate through the pieces that we know work because we have seen them work,
Yeah.
but also make it feel aligned for us? What's your take on that?
Well, I think this is one of the hardest things because sometimes what somebody is saying is the objection is not actually the
Yes.
objection. So if you're free, let's use the instance that you talked about, which I think is really common. Well, I have to talk to my partner about this. I need to call my husband. I'm not allowed to, I can't make this decision on my own. I need to weigh in. Sometimes that's true. If this is a really high ticket item, right? If you're buying a car, or if
Yep.
if there's like a significant investment, oftentimes that's a crutch. That's a fake objection
Yep.
because they are empowered to make the decision, but they don't believe in what it is you're selling them. And so they're basically pushing you off. And so I think it's important to really be able to identify what is the real objection that they're having. And
Love
this
that.
is why asking the right questions up front become so important because then you'll know, when you get to that point, is this real or is this not real? And you said something else that I think is really important is during this sales process, right? The marketing, and this is where the marketing funnel comes into play too, is from the top of your, if you, right, like we're talking about a sales funnel. So think of a funnel. It's big on top, that's the marketing piece, and then it's small on the bottom, that's the sales piece. And hopefully a lot of stuff is happening in between. And why the top is big and the bottom is small is because you're weeding people out along the way, right? That are not a fit for what you are selling them. And what happens at the bottom, and this is sort of what you alluded to and talked about, is you're so anxious to just make the sale
Mhm.
that you're not trusting your instincts to say, is this even somebody I want to work with? And so I would say that, part of the sales process is you're interviewing other people. This is mostly for service-based businesses. I
Sure.
think if it's a product, it's a little bit different. But for service-based businesses, you also need to interview them throughout this process and make sure that you're a right fit for them and that they're a right fit for you. And if you're doing all of that, if you're asking the right questions, if you've through all of your marketing channels and, getting down below, have figured out that they're the right fit, when you get to the part about objections, they tend to be real, right? So this is too expensive for me. Sometimes that's legit. Sometimes it's just not in somebody's budget. But you can ask, there are ways to navigate that. I don't have the time to invest in whatever this is, right? And so then you can sort of backtrack and say, okay, well, how much time do you have? And you can reframe it for someone, or you can downsell them on like a smaller level program that you may have to offer. But I think the important part is like making sure that by the time you get to that consult call or you get to that point of sale, you've done your job enough to make sure that it's the right fit for you, that and you're asking the right questions. So by the time the objections come up, you're not getting the fake objection, you're getting the real objection.
Yeah, I love that. I think that it's our job, and from a marketer's perspective,
Yeah.
it's our job to handle them in our marketing. Like most of the objections that you might see should be or the fake ones anyway,
Yeah.
should be handled by the time they're coming on into the sales environment, right? Where
Yep.
they're coming into the sales environment and you've done your due diligence to like actually clarify or teach them, educate them
Yeah.
that the objection that they might have, like to put that at ease through the way that you message the offer and through the marketing. So I love that. I think that's great. What would you say are the mistakes that you're seeing the most? Like where are we getting it wrong?
Yeah. I think we talked about it a little bit. I think we're confusing marketing and sales a lot right now.
Yeah.
I think we think putting out content and growing our Instagram followers and our Facebook fans and all of that is sales, or that we're going to very easily, just by talking about what it is we do or giving a little behind the scenes look, be able to convert those people into clients and customers. And like I said, that might work a little bit, but especially I would say in the last 18 months, I've heard from a lot of people that the market has changed. It's a
That's
lot tougher. People are a lot more discerning around where and how they're spending. So those tactics may have worked before, but
yeah.
you're finding that they're working less and less. And so I think we need to spend as much energy on our being thoughtful around sales as we are about our marketing, because I can guarantee you that however many followers you have, whoever is touching your brand, it's already enough if it's the right people. Now you need to work on converting those people.
Yeah.
That's number one. And then number two is I would say, getting really smart about when you get those potential clients on a consult call, or they come to your webinar, or they are, however you're engaging with them to get them to convert, being really intentional around how you're communicating with them, what information you're getting, and like I said it before, helping to bring them into the decision-making process and let them come to the conclusion that you're the right fit by asking the right questions. And when you phrase things in a way that helps them understand that you know about their business, that you care about their business, that you want them to succeed, then you become somebody that they want to work with.
Yeah, I think that's so true, right? It's not just about it's about relationships too, right? Like people want to know that
Yeah.
you're safe for them. And I think that's really important. I love that you name the piece around followers, right? There's a
Yeah.
lot of people on the internet. I spend a lot of time on the internet, Instagram, threads, love it there. But there's a lot of people that are like selling sales courses and then they're teaching content. And you're like,
Right.
it's
This is
not
not
it.
sales.
And the number of people that I've been in masterminds and environments with that have very large followings, like you said, that 100,000 plus following that are making no money because
Mm-hmm.
they haven't figured out how to effectively sell is astounding. I also know people that are making seven figures with a very small following
Mm-hmm.
on social media. And so I think this conversation is so important because being able to have these skills is truly imperative because like
Yeah.
we said at the beginning, if you're not making money, it's because
You
you're
don't
not
have a
selling.
business.
And so
Yeah.
how do we need to fix that?
And sales skills are not just for founders that have something to sell or consultants or coaches. I think a lot of what we're talking about here is valuable no matter what you're doing. Even if you're working inside of an organization, right? You need to sell your ideas through within your organization. You need to negotiate for yourself when you want a promotion or you want a raise. You need to be able to ask thoughtful questions from whoever your partners are that you're working with. When I say sales skills are life skills, I really mean it. And we were talking before, we both have kids. I'm constantly negotiating with my son, and I don't know how he's always getting the better of me. This is what I do for a living. But, all of it in all areas of our life, if you can master the art of selling, it will impact other areas of your life that you won't even think about in a really positive way.
Yeah, so true. So, and it's Halloween today as we're recording this,
Yes.
and I'm sure there's going to be some sales negotiations
Oh,
later
yes.
tonight when it comes to candy consumption. So, it's so true. I think moms, women, like we're already selling, guys. Just like let's figure
Yes.
out how to hone it
That's right. That's
for
right.
your businesses. You were telling me earlier before we started
Yes.
recording about something that you have created, the profit planner. And I'd love to talk about this because we talk about numbers, right? And like
Mhm.
how much I want to make seven figures or I want to make $500,000. And usually we don't even really know what that means or what we have
Yep.
to do to get there. So tell us about what you've created because I think it's really special.
And I thank you. And I'm very excited about it because I talk to women and I help women entrepreneurs all the time. And it's true. A lot of us have these ideas of where we want our company to be from a revenue perspective. And I think that's great. I think if you want a multi six, seven, eight figure business, you should absolutely be striving for that. But you have to start somewhere. And I think when you're 0 to 3 years into your business, really understanding the fundamentals, the business number fundamentals is important. And so the profit planner is geared to do just that. And not only in your business, I take it a step further and we talk about in your personal life how much money do you need to bring in every month or every year? And so, for a lot of people who have a side hustle that they're hoping to turn into a full time gig, or, like I said, they're early in their business, you need to have a real handle in order to properly plan for your business goals. You need to understand how much money you actually need in order to fuel your life. Doesn't mean that you're not going to try to like shoot for the moon from a revenue perspective. And so, we go through sort of some personal finance budgeting around how much you need, and then we translate that into your business. And so we say, okay, this is the minimum take home number your business has to have. And so we layer on top of that taxes, which I think a lot of entrepreneurs and small business owners, especially early in their business life cycle when they're sort of growing pretty fast, really underestimate how much taxes you have to pay. And then we add in all of the costs to run your business, marketing costs, any staff or consultants or outside help that you need to hire, all of your tech costs, rent, anything, accounting, anything that is a cost. And then from there, we figure out from a top line perspective how much money your business needs to make. And now we can start mapping to sales from there. I think, like I said, it's important to know that bottom line number, like cash in your pocket, and it's important to know that top line, but there's a lot of steps that go in between. And let's say that top line number is $100,000, $250,000, whatever it is. It doesn't mean you can't plan for seven figures, but it means like this is the minimum we need to hit. And so let's nap towards at least that.
There's so much arbitrariness, which is not a word, but that's just what's come out of my mouth when it comes to making these choices, right? And
Yeah.
I was guilty of this in the beginning of my business because I was seeing, so and so is making seven figures and they're doing 750,000 and 2 million. And so I would just pull out a number. I'd be like,
Yeah.
well, this year I'm going to make $400,000. And I had no basis for it. I wasn't figuring out how I was actually like working that backwards. I also didn't know how, like, whether that was even an amount of money that I desired. And so years ago, one of my mentors had us do an exercise where it looked at all of our expenses that we had currently. And then if we were to live our quote unquote dream life, what would we increase? How much would that increase? And I'll tell you right now, it wasn't $1 million. I don't need that to live my dream life. Doesn't mean I don't want to make $1 million a year. Let's just be clear.
Yeah.
But to actually do the things that to quote unquote, live my dream life, it's not that number. And then being able to work back what that looks like in my business and then to figure out, okay, I'll use my mastermind for an example, because this is just the context. So I was like, okay, one of my offers is my ambition mastermind. I run that twice a year. It's X number of dollars. And right now I have 10 people. And so this mentor said to me, okay, well, in order to hit this target, you need 40 people in the mastermind. And in my mind, I'm like, well, I actually don't want 40 people in the mastermind. Like, that's not really the point. And so then it's just becomes an exercise of looking at my business like, okay, so if it's not that, then what is it going to be? And then how do we create the thing, or, adjust pricing or whatever it looks like.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a really powerful exercise. And it sounds like what you've created is something that will support people to do similar.
Yes,
Right?
absolutely. Yeah. And it's not about, and I'm all about having aggressive goals. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying you shouldn't want to make $1 million.
Don't tone it down.
1,000%. Like, go shoot for your dream life. I support that. And like, let's all help you get there. Right.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is, you look at those people who are doing that and you think, one, they did it overnight, and they didn't. That's years in the making. Building a 7-figure business is hard work.
Yeah.
And you need to make sure that your bases are covered. And so that's what this is about. Is I've seen a lot of people get burned where they leave a full-time role, they start a company, they think they've replaced their income, and they're at the end of the year, taxes and all of these expenses that they didn't account for, and they're short. And I don't want that to happen to people. I want you to be able to plan in the right way.
I love that. And that has been me in the past.
That's been me in the past too.
So if anyone's hearing us talk about this and you're like, yeah, that's me, and you're feeling any shame about it, just know that that's been me. That's been Jack. And we learn, right? This is I'm a person that is not, and I've talked about this before on the podcast, when it comes to like money and numbers, my brain doesn't naturally want to do that. My brain's like, nah, I'm good. I'm going to focus on something that feels a little more fun. Like, does anyone need a Canva graphic? Like, does anyone want to do something, or not a Canva, but like anything creative? Like,
Yes.
let me go do something
Yes.
creative. I don't want to sit in this spreadsheet. But that's why resourcing yourself with people that do,
Yeah.
or that can people that can make it simple for you, is something
Yeah.
that I think has been really helpful for me, and just acknowledging that about myself.
Yeah.
But this sounds like a really incredible resource, and we'll make sure that we put
Thank you.
information in the show notes for anyone that's listening that wants to check it out. But Jack, you have dropped so much incredible information on this. I think this is going to be one for people to save and revisit a few times. But for our listeners, what is the best way to learn more about you and to connect with you? How can we find you online?
Yeah. So I'm loving LinkedIn. So you can find me on LinkedIn, Jack White. You can also go to my website, honeybeesgroup.co. We have an email newsletter where we send out lots of great information every week. And you can check out Girls Make Bank podcast, which we dive in. We bring experts on. Lori, you're going to be a guest soon. We bring people on to talk about lots of things just like this to help you get smarter about selling.
I love the name Girls Make Bank because,
Girls
like,
Make
let's be
Bank.
real. We all need to make, I think if more girls made bank, the world would be a better place.
This is not only theory, we've actually proven through studies that when women make money, we invested in our families, we invested in our communities, we spend according to our values.
Yeah.
This is the whole mission, right? Is to help women make money so that we're spending money in wise ways.
Well, cheers to that. And I know that this episode is going to help some women make some more money through better sales. So Jack, thank you so much for being here and sharing your knowledge with us.
Thank you so much. This has been really fun.
Yes, it really has. We've had this, the time has flown. Thank you so much for listening. I hope that you got some really incredible insights from this. I know I did, and I hope that you apply it to your own sales strategy. Thanks so much for listening. We'll see you at the next episode.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Girls Make Bank. If you like what you've heard, please remember to subscribe, like, and follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen. Please review and share our show to help spread the word and help your girls make bank. And I'd love to hear from you. Connect with me on LinkedIn or Instagram, or visit honeybeesgroup.co. Until next time, friends.